Good morning, mompreneurs. Maureen Doss with the Virtual Workhorse team and the Mompreneur and Co group. And today we're on Mom Talk Live, which I don't usually do live. I usually pre-record and host on YouTube and then kind of share. But today we were feeling kind of fresh and wanted to go live and in the group. And so today I'm here with Dena, and I want her to introduce herself. She has an amazing group for moms. And so go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do in your group.
Well, first I want to thank you, Maureen, for having me here and for this opportunity. I'm excited that we're doing something fresh and unique.
Yes.
Why not have a little fun with it today?
Hello. We don't have to follow the books all the time, right?
That's right. That's right. My name is Dena Farash, and I run an organization called the Mindful Mom Revolution. And what I do is I help women and mothers show up at the best version of themselves. That is through their parenting, their desire to build out businesses in the online space, and also reconnects them with the fact that if they have big dreams for themselves, it is up to them to pursue that unapologetically so that they can be that example for their kids.
Yes. And I so love that. I love that. And so before we kind of get into things, can you tell us a little bit about your family and your kids?
Absolutely. I am happily married to my husband, who is currently training for his 7th black belt. We have 3 children, a daughter who will be 9 in May. Our son came 18 months later. He's 7. And then the baby, who was a complete surprise, is 4 years old.
Oh my goodness. Yes. A little cherry on top, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Definitely. That's okay. Those surprises can turn out to be the best little blessing in your life.
Absolutely.
I love it. And so tell me, when did you know, have you always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit, or when did you know, hey, I want to do this. I want to start a business?
It's a good question. I think I always was in sales of some type, and I have been in a gym atmosphere as a personal trainer for many, many years.
Okay.
I was working as a personal trainer at a gym, and they came out of nowhere with this really nasty, stringent non-compete. And I remember looking at my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, and I said, I'm not doing this. I'm not signing this. I absolutely refuse. And so I left the gym and I took my clients with me to where I didn't know, but I knew they wanted to stay with me. So I did on the fly and started training them in their homes. And I learned a lot in that first leg of my own business of how to market myself, how to create relationships and networks, and how to continue to drive business by myself. So I was so used to having a crutch of a company for so long. And I made twice as much money that first year out on my own than I ever did working in a gym.
Wow.
From there, it just kind of grew and grew. I'm somebody who's passionate about having freedom, time freedom, financial freedom, and flexibility. And while I have had in my tenure, I've had two other instances where I went back to work for somebody. What always felt most true for me is to be able to fly.
Right. I love that, because in which that could be a whole nother video about, making that decision, working for yourself versus working, for the man or whatever we want to call it. But yeah, I love that. And so that's amazing. And so through your time, like what I love to do on my Mom Talk is just really be real about, having a family, wanting to be there for them, be present with them when you are there with them, yet you are building a business, right? And if you're like me and other moms, sometimes there are other moms, they're just like, this is just a side gig, I'm just having fun with it. But I know, for me, like, we have to do this, we're providing for our family, but yet we want so much more, right? And so, tell me a little bit about any kind of struggles, like mentally, that you've had with that. Have you felt mom guilt over the choices to kind of want this for yourself as well? Because I know you do talk about that a lot in your group and what you do.
It's an interesting layered question, right?
Yes.
And I'll start off with this. I have always been somebody who has big vision and dreams and desires for
Yeah.
myself. And so I've never associated guilt with having those feelings.
Okay.
There lives a lot of certainty about who I am and how I'm meant to show up in this world. And
Right.
I choose to lean into the certainty rather than the doubt and the guilt.
I
That
love
being
that.
said, since having a family, there have definitely been boundaries that I've had to place
Yes.
around my work in
Right.
order for my family to know that regardless, they are still the most important people in my lives.
Yeah. And I love that. I so love that because sometimes people do lean onto the guilt side more so. And especially, I think you said something really important. If you don't have that within yourself, what did you say it was? Like you had
Certainty.
certainty. Yeah, you had certainty, like this is what you were supposed to be doing. And so do you feel like you grew up feeling like that, or was that something that you had to learn? You
Yeah,
had to
it's
work on
interesting.
yourself,
Well,
or
it's interesting because I'm just unpacking, different layers of my childhood trauma these days. But
aren't we all,
but
girl?
I have always been somebody who reaches for the stars. I grew
Okay.
up in a home where that wasn't validated. And
Uh-huh.
so I wound up down this spiral of seeking outside of myself for validation instead of
Yes.
understanding that all of this truth and this power and this innate wisdom was inside of me.
Okay.
And
Wow.
as I'm unpacking this really in real time in these past few weeks of
Yeah.
understanding how these things were squashed in my own upbringing,
Yeah.
I'm just leaning into more of what I know is true. And that is these beliefs that I have about myself and how I'm meant to show up and be of service to other women specifically.
Yeah.
Because that feels better than dealing, and just in general, that feels better than dealing with the saying, well, who am I to do this? And what if I get exposed? Or what if I miss too much of my children's lives?
Mhm.
My mentality, I think, many times is a choice, right? And when I'm able to recognize what it is, I can shift to a better feeling choice. And I've learned that through my work over the years with meditation, which has saved my life in at least two different ways, and which was a big precipice for me getting online in the way that I am right now.
Yeah. Wow. I totally love your story and how you're so, I feel like you have a confidence, and well, I'll use that word again, certainty. Like I love that. I really do love that. And I think that you're showing up for your children, even though we think, maybe I'm not with them like one to one at this time, or, while I'm doing this, but they're watching, right? They're still learning and watching you. And, I can just tell you're just paving the way for them to be their own selves. Yeah, I love that. I so love that. Well, that's amazing. So what about, as far as was it let's talk about, running your business, and has that come easy, like secondhand for you? Because I know you've been doing some different businesses throughout the years. So do you feel like that was always easy for you? Because I know there's a lot of moms out there, especially newer mompreneurs, that are like, this is so hard. I don't think I can do it. I don't see how I can do it and raise a family. And I just want to be like a little shining light. I want us to be like a little shining light for them to be like, you don't have to choose like work or family. Like you can still make your dreams come true and be a good mom and raise a amazing family the way that you want to. So I'm sorry. I know I talk a lot. You're like,
Thank
Maureen, you
you.
asked me like 10 questions.
I'm with you. So the first thing I want to say is that you can, and I believe this wholeheartedly, I believe it's even printed on my website. This is something that I say with my clients all the time. You cannot teach your children to follow their dreams if you are not willing to follow yours.
Hmm.
And I think as moms, we all know that it's not so much do as I say, it's do as I do. So if you
Hmm.
are not actively pursuing what lights you up inside and you are
Hmm.
giving away your power just to be of service to everybody else, that's what
Hmm.
your children, that's what your daughters are going to learn. And that's
Right.
how they are going to model their lives in the same exact way.
Yeah.
And has business always been easy? Absolutely not, right? It's the journey, as they say. It's the growth. It's understanding that failure is part of success. It's
Right.
understanding that you need to stand on a mountain of no's in order to receive one yes.
Yeah.
And it is building up that resilient part of who you are so
Mhm.
that you can step into this future version of who you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think what has gotten me through the tough times and even the times where my family craves more of me, perhaps, and I
Mhm.
feel conflicted in some ways are two things. And those are boundaries and permission. For
Yes.
me, I work in the online space. And so I realized many, many years ago that I needed to put boundaries around when I was scrolling on my phone. And
Right.
I'll be honest with you, really honest with you. Lately, I haven't been so good about honoring my boundaries. And my oldest, who will be 9 next month, is calling me out on it all the
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
She's letting me know that even if I'm just sitting next to her doing nothing, it's not my time to be on my phone. Right. And
Mhm.
so when we're in these service-based places, when we come from our heart and we know that we want to share in a community like style, we want to support people, we have to remember that there are boundaries around when we can do that so that
Mhm.
we can still show up and mother in the way that makes us feel happy and proud.
Yeah.
The second part of that is giving ourselves permission, right? My businesses have evolved as I've evolved throughout my
Right.
childhood. And if
Mhm.
I was to be so stringent and only allow myself to do the very first thing that I would do, I wouldn't be happy because I'd
Right.
be clipping my wings instead of letting them expand and fly.
Yeah. I really love that. So let's go back to your daughter, right? We're both in the online space, as a lot of people that are watching this mostly probably are. And so that does give us, we feel like we have permission ourselves to be on our phone a little bit more, right? We're looking on Facebook, we're looking in groups, this is kind of how we know we do some marketing and things like that. So setting those boundaries for yourself is so important. But I think one thing, that I talk about a lot is giving your family, setting those boundaries with your family and setting the expectations, right? And so your daughter is like helping you along with that, I think, right? And so, but I think that's so good that she understands that at such a young age, you know, that just because you're here with me, sitting next to me, doesn't mean that you're really fully present with me, right? Your mind is kind of somewhere else. You're thinking about work, you're thinking about your business. So I love that. I really do love that. And that she's saying that to you.
Calling
Um,
down on it.
yeah, yeah. Because, just I think it was 2 weeks ago, I did my unplugged challenge, and it was literally about just that thing. I took 3 days and I gave just some simple prompts throughout those 3 days of some ways that you can unplug. And one of those was, you know, pick these times when you're not going to be on your phone, even if it's when, if you're picking a certain time of day. Or for me, because my kids are 16 and 21, I'm still only 29, but um,
I
just
love how
kidding.
you did that.
Um, but so I choose to be, when they're in the room with me, I choose to be fully present and not have my phone out. And that the reason I can choose that more so than someone with a 9-year-old is that they're not always there. Right. They're out, especially the 21-year-old, they're older, they're out doing their things. So when they are there with me, I want to be fully present. And so I choose that. And so yeah, setting those expectations, boundaries, guidelines, I think those are all good words to have in a mompreneur life.
And knowing that there's a gray area where it gets
Yeah,
muddled and that you're going to get it
definitely.
wrong. And so
Exactly.
as any good daughter does, she is right there to call me out.
Yeah.
And I'll share where it gets complicated because I've had a few major tech issues in the past week. My work email went down for 5 days, and I could
Oh,
really feel my nervous system like go into survival shutdown mode. And
yeah.
just yesterday, I was at this big event. I made a lot of really wonderful connections. And I
Oh,
went home and I got a LinkedIn message while I was at my son's baseball game that, hey, Dena, your website isn't working. And I had just given out 70 business cards. I had just made incredible connections. And then I went into panic mode, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, my kids were privy to the stress that I was experiencing.
Yeah.
And here's the beautiful thing about parenting: when we're aware, we can always make a reconnection. We can always apologize, right? That
Right.
doesn't give us the excuse to abuse the fact that our children want our attention.
Right.
However, there are some moments where I can articulate to my kids, I'm really sorry. This isn't about you. I'm super stressed right now, because my
Yeah.
kids don't get things like website integrations, right? They don't care that my membership page is not
Yeah.
running and operating as it should be. They just want their mom. And so
Hmm.
even in those moments of high stress, I can excuse myself and come back to them with the
Yeah.
intention of reconnecting. I get it wrong all the time. All the time.
Hmm.
I make mistakes
Right.
as a mom
We
all the
do.
time, as we all do. However, I still do my best to be as present for them in the moments that I can be.
Yeah. Well, and I love that because that teaches them too that, hey, we all make mistakes and I can admit that and I can, say I'm sorry, it happens, instead of, some other responses that, they could grow up learning that mistakes are bad and that, if you make them, maybe you should hide them or, different things like that. So I think you're, in accepting that and sharing that with them, you're teaching them so much. Hey, I'm sorry, it's not you, it's me.
Yeah. I think it also lets them know that we value what they say.
Yeah.
My children, and it's such an interesting conversation, because in the past week or two, my children really have been on me about the amount that I'm on the computer and I'm
Yeah.
disconnected from them. And so there's two different ways to respond. For
Hmm.
me, when they give me a hard time about it, of course, I'm cringing inside. It's not from a place of guilt. It's from this place as children that they don't see what I'm doing. Daddy leaves the house and he goes to work. So it's okay
Right, exactly.
work. My husband's response, honestly, is to snap at them. Don't you
Hmm.
know what your mother does? Don't you know what she does?
Yeah.
She does so
Yeah.
much for you. And so, of course, there's a part of me that feels that same type of emotional reaction that he
Mhm.
has. And I know he's just sticking up for me. However, I want my children to know that what they say matters.
Yeah.
And so it's an invitation for a conversation,
Mhm.
because being part of a family, being a mom is not a role, it's a relationship. And when
Mm.
we can understand that it's a symbiotic relationship where both parts are valued, we can have
Right.
conversations with our kids, age appropriate conversations with our kids, so that they know this is why mommy is working, this is why mommy seems disconnected in this moment.
Mm.
The little things that matter to them, I don't even get sometimes. The
Right.
perfect example, last night my kids were watching TV and I had
Right.
my phone out and I was just connecting with people online. And my daughter looked at me and she goes, "We talked about this, mom." And I started to laugh, because I'm like, all you're doing is you're zoning out watching TV. I thought I could do the same thing, but
Yeah.
in her mind, that meant I wasn't focusing on them. And so
Yeah.
our children are constantly sharing with us what it is they need and how they value our time. And when we put certain boundaries around work and being with our kids, we can lean into a little bit more of what it is they need, not what we think they need.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we have to wrap it up in just a few minutes, but I do want to ask you, I know that you yourself don't deal with the mom guilt, but for women that do, what would you suggest to them? I mean, I think that's a deep question, but if you could just give a tip or one suggestion, what do you think it would be?
Here's something that I learned a really long time ago that
Yeah.
changed me. I come from this place of meditation. I live in a world of energy and
Right.
vibration. And so I do my best, not always, because I'm still I'm a very, very flawed, imperfect human. However, I do my best to really recognize what it is I'm thinking and feeling. There
Right.
is this great tool called the emotional guidance scale. And
Huh.
basically, it's kind of this triangular tool, but basically, every emotion we feel is listed on there and it gives off a certain vibration, a certain emanation, right? And if you live in the world of energy, we know what we put out is what we give in. So if you were to look at the emotional guidance scale, guilt is in the bottom three, the very,
Okay.
very bottom. So what happens inside of our bodies, it can't decipher that we're feeling guilty because we've cheated on our husband, or we're feeling guilty because we've murdered somebody. Guilt is guilt is guilt. And there's
Okay.
no
So whether
hierarchy.
you ate the brownie and you shouldn't have, or you killed somebody, like you're
Right.
still feeling the same.
Absolutely. It's the same type of vibration that we are allowing within our bodies. Here's another thing. I used to speak about this often, and it's just coming back to me. We have convinced ourselves as moms that we can give ourselves permission to do something. However, if we feel guilty about it, that means we're still a good mom. And I like to call BS on that. You are allowed
Okay.
to take care of yourself without having any guilt. I call it
Right.
unapologetic self-care, right? Or in this situation, unapologetic dream doing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Giving ourselves permission to say, being a mom is not the whole part of me. There are other parts of me that need to be nurtured so that I can be a good mom. And when we
Right.
lean into more of those parts that need to be nurtured, whether it's going to the gym, self-care, right? Taking a class, getting our nails done, or doing our work, then we
Mm-hmm.
understand that all of this is about creating the layers and the beauty about who you are. And when you nurture who you are, when you create the best version of yourself, then you
Right.
are much more apt to raise the best version of your kids.
Yes. I love that. So I, I love you. I love what you do. I love your group. You know, I've been in it for a while. And so today after we go live, let's put your group link in the comments and all of that so people can find you and follow you. But I think one thing that I'm going to take away from this, and then I want other moms to take away from this, is be unapologetically you. Like, yeah, we don't have to apologize for us being us, right? We're not just mom, we're not just wife, we're all this, and we need to take care of ourselves. And I so love that.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for giving me an
Thank
opportunity to
you.
share. But I will tell you, the emotional guidance scale is the game changer. So I would Google,
Okay.
download that picture, and understands that guilt is guilt is guilt. And when we ruminate
Right.
in guilt, that doesn't actually help us become a better mom.
Right. Okay. I definitely need to look at the scale. All
It's
right, girl.
eye-opening. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much. We'll find you over in your group. Remind us what the name is.
It's Mindful Moms Who Make Money from Home, and I'm happy to have you all there.
Yes. Awesome. Okay. Great. Dena, have a good day. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. You too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.